Director Miller, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, I will. Please stand, place your hand over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Miller. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 4, Justin Lane.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias. Keith. Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Here. Item number 4, adoption of agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll move that we adopt the agenda. This is Director Lane.
I'll second. This is Director Miller.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Justin Lane.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
And Shelley Sourceable.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Public comment period and period open to the public. If there's anybody that wishes to address the board at this time, that would be the time. Okay, voluntary public roll call via teleconference. If any member of the public on this teleconference wishes to identify themselves as present for the meeting, please do so now for the record. Okay, item number 6, new business.
Yes, Board President Sourceable, members of the board. This item is a negotiated exchange of property revenue resulting from the annexation number 8 of the Tejon Castac. I want to say Castac, but it's Castac Water District. And Assistant General Manager Knudsen has a short staff report to explain what this item is.
All right, thank you, Dwayne. Good evening, directors. So I'd like to point your attention to page 4 of your agenda packet, which includes the resolution that we will be considering this evening. As Dwayne mentioned, Resolution R20-10 is a negotiated exchange of property tax revenue resulting from annexation number 8 to the Tejon Castac Water District. So, as you know, or may not know, Tejon Castac Water District is proposing to annex approximately 47,000 contiguous acres within the Tejon Ranch. Part of it's located within Kern County, and part of it is within LA County. The resolution that we're considering tonight only includes that portion in LA County. And the primary purpose of this is related to their recently approved Centennial Project site. So I have a little map up here off to the right. You can see the yellow shaded area is the proposed annexation number 8 that's being considered. And you can see going diagonally across the page, kind of midway of the map, is the county line. And then just south of the county line, you can see in the black checkerboard area or hatch area is the Centennial Project boundary. And we also include on the map the Avek boundary, which is the blue line that you can see both north and south of Centennial Project. So that, as I kind of mentioned, the annexation is needed for TCWD, which is the Tone Castac Water District, to become a public water supplier to serve the Centennial Project. And this is consistent with the approved EIR for their project. Any questions on the map before I move on? Okay. We'll make this short and sweet. The recommendation is for the proposed joint resolution between various county agencies and special districts that currently collect tax revenue within properties within this annexation. And those include the Fire Protection District, the County Library, County Road Department or Road District number 5, the Cemetery District, the Antelope Valley Resource Conservation District, Avek, and between Tejon Castac Water District. So the next bullet is an important part. The expansion of the water district and approval of resolution R20-10 will have no financial impact on AVEC and does not adjust the allocation of property tax that AVEC would receive. And I want to point your attention back on page 4 of the agenda packet. That is it's pointed out in the second whereas of the resolution. So based on that, staff and legal counsel have reviewed the resolution, and we are recommending that the board approve resolution number 20-10. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, if there's no questions, do I have a motion for approval?
This is Rob. I move to approve resolution number R20-10.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Justin Lane,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Kelly Sorsable.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Item number 7, presentation and workshop on fiscal year 2020-21 budget.
Yes, Board President Sorsable and members of the board, tonight we're going to provide a presentation of the board on the budget, and this is a workshop, so please interrupt me if you have any questions during the course of the presentation. I'd like to start off with the mission of AVEC. Mission of AVEC is to deliver reliable, sustainable, and high-quality supplemental water to the region in a cost-effective and efficient manner. The budget that you see that's going to be presented tonight is consistent with the mission statement for the agency. As far as a overview of the presentation, we're going to take a look at several graphs to give a historical perspective of where we are from both a cost and revenue side of the agency's finances. We'll discuss the proposed budget, including the assumptions, the anticipated revenues, the anticipated expenses. We'll also discuss the capital improvement plan and the information technology budget, and wrap up with a discussion of the remaining reserves following the proposed adoption of the budget tonight. Many of the items that are contained in the budget have been reviewed by several different committees. We had the finance committee that looked at the operation and maintenance budgets and revenues. The capital committee looked at the capital improvement, and the planning committee looked at the information technology budget. And the recommendations from those committees are contained in the budget that will be presented to you tonight. As a way of historical background, we wanted to show you this. We've been tracking this graph for several years. And what this graph indicates over here, here's the amount of acre feet that's available per year. And that's outlined in the blue bars. And you can see the amounts of water that were available based on any particular year. And then the brown bars are the amounts of water that were actually sold during those years. So you can see there, there's a big dip back in 2014, 2015 with the drought, and that the amount of water that's been sold has generally increased over the last 4 or 5 years, but certainly isn't the volume that you saw earlier in the decade. This particular graph talks about dollar amounts and total sales. So you can see in comparison that there was a rise in revenue of between 20 to 25,000. The drought occurred, and then with the development of the long-term financial plan and the rate studies, we were able to generate additional revenues from the water being sold, and you can see this increase in actual revenue that's attributed to the amount of water that's been sold. We look at, this gives us a little bit of a historical perspective on our property tax revenue, and this is a very important aspect of the district's finances. The steady increase in assessed value has allowed the district to maintain its current tax rate while there is a steady increase in revenue received by the agency. And it's important to that this additional assessed value increase over time so we can maintain our tax rate at the current rate. As we look at the fixed costs, and these are the costs associated with the Department of Water Resources, you can see that they have gone up at a fairly modest rate the last couple of years. There's an addition here that's associated with some of the additional costs that have been associated with the Orville Reservoir project that we're beginning to incur. During this period is when the state water contractors in 2016 was somewhat upset with DWR, asking why the big increase from 2015 to 2016. And there has been some changes made in DWR over the last couple of years to what they call affordability committee, and they've done a much better job of trying to plan out their capital facilities and their replacement facilities so that they don't over budget and over collect on their billing, and that has improved somewhat. Next slide shows you our operating costs, and you can see this is there's been an increase in those operating costs for the last few years, and the operating costs are associated with the amount of water that's being delivered. And if you remember from the earlier slides, some of those other years we had quite a bit of 2 or 3 really wet years that provided for this amount. Included in these operating costs are what we call the variable costs for delivery of water through the over the Tehachapi Mountains, which provides a significant cost for the operating costs. This graph here also looks at both water sales, operating expenses, and transfers and exchanges. So the operating expenses are shown in green, and the water sales, and this is in dollar amounts, are shown in blue. So you can see in the early part that with the exception of 2012, that the sales were greater than the operating expenses. But as we got into the drought period, that changed a little bit. And what has kind of saved us along the way is these gold bars, which is the outside water sales and transfers that have really helped to stabilize and improve the financial picture for the operating expenses associated with the water project. I'll stop there. Any questions on the historical perspective of where we are at and tracking our expenses and revenues? Hearing none, we'll move on to the discussion of the budget itself. The 2021 budget assumptions that are included in the budget includes that the property tax revenues are based on the property taxes received in 1920. So we know that that's a very conservative approach, but it does provide assurance that we'll have those monies available to us. The water sales that are expected to be about 50,000 acre feet this next year. And based on that 50,000 acre feet, we're assuming a variable rate of $250 per acre foot. This is a little conservative in that the DWR rate has been moving around a little bit, and it's currently at $233 per acre foot. We did include the revenue from the Five Lions, the one exchange that we were able to complete in this next fiscal year. We included the 7.5% increase in water rates. That's consistent with the 5-year financial plan for the agency. The budget also includes a 1% COLA adjustment for the personnel budget based on the Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim index. It was about 6%, but the personnel committee recommended a 1% COLA adjustment, and that's reflected in the budget. In addition to that, we had health insurance increases of 6% for Blue Cross and 9% for Kaiser. So these assumptions are included in the budget as the numbers are developed. Well, if we take a look at where we were versus where we are, we'll take a kind of a look at last year. We budgeted a little over $74 million in revenues. We actually received $83 million, almost $84 million in revenues. The majority of that difference can be contributed to the refund by Metropolitan Water District because we hadn't included that in our budgeted revenues at the time. And then as far as budgeted expenses are concerned, we budgeted $64,774,000. And to date, and this is a number that's close until we haven't gotten all of our actual expenses for this year. But you can see we're going to be coming in below budget by at least probably 8, 9, 10%. Once all the accounting's done. But it gives you an idea that we are definitely above on revenues and below on expenses from the budget from last year. So if we take a look at the budget moving forward in the new fiscal year, you can see we have budgeted revenues of $71 million as opposed to 74. That's about a 3% decrease in budgeted revenues. It's approximately $2.1 million. Most of that is in outside water sales. If we're able to achieve a good water year for some reason, we may be able to increase this number. But for budgeted purposes, we didn't count on that. And then also from the budgeted expenses, you can see that we have about a 2.8% increase, where we had 66 million. 0.6 and 64 million from the previous year, an increase. And I'll show you a little more detail about 1.2 of that 1.9 million is associated with DWR cost increases. So can we put up the little handout? This is an item that's contained in your board packet. And we'll put this up. This gets into a little better detail here. So we categorize this into operating revenues and expenses. You can see here, because we're anticipating selling approximately the same amount of water, you can see there's no real difference here with regards to water sales. As we've talked about, this is the difference that you see in revenues, because this is transfers and exchanges. We had a very low water year, so we didn't have many exchanges to add to the budget. But this does include the nickel water revenue associated with the San Gregorio lease. So you can see we're about 6% off from a revenue point of view is what we're projecting for this next fiscal year. As we move into the operating expenses, you can see that the actual water purchases or the cost for the water as we call our variable costs are about the same as the previous year. You've got water delivery and treatment, about a 4% increase. That's primarily associated with the treatment costs for chemicals and new oxygen supplier. We also had some you can see about a 7% for maintenance and supplies. And then the fees and services is at 6%, and that has a couple of one-time expenses that we wouldn't anticipate in the future. There's about $125,000 contained in this budget to pay for the election that's going to occur in November. We have our travel and transportation budget that's a little bit less than what it was the previous year. If COVID-19 restrictions continue, that'll probably even be less, although it's a small quantity versus the whole amount of the budget. And then we have some personnel expenses that you can see here, about 8%. Once again, this is associated with just normal the normal increases associated with step increases and other factors that have been outlined with the personnel committee. And then under the other expenses, you can see that it's about 14% lower as far as other expenses go. And then there are depreciation. So that's the item. So we're about 3%. Our operating expenses about 3% higher than they were the previous year. And we go into the non-operating revenues, and you can see that our property tax revenues are up about 1% from the previous year. And you can see that the investment income is we're predicting is going to be somewhat lower. As you can imagine, the interest rates are pretty low at the present time, so we're projecting a couple $100,000 reduction in revenue from this source. Other income, we have an increase of about 3%. And so we have that. And so the whole non-operating revenues are approximately 1%. And you can see here, when we go down to the non-operating expenses, we have a number that's at 1.2 million or 5%, which I talked about. So a bit of good news that we have is we look at the next item having to do with the bond interest and fees. You can see that we have a reduction of approximately 10% there. And the majority of that's associated with paying down our debt. So our interest amount is less. In addition to that, we have the positive effects of the letter of credit at the lower interest rate that we received earlier this spring. So we look at the non-operating expenses, they're about 3%. So when we take a look at it in total, I'm going to see if we get up here. Okay. You can see that if we look at total revenues, we're off about 3%. Total expenses, we're up about 3% in total. But we still maintain a surplus of 5.3 million total. So I'll pause here just to answer any particular questions the board may have. Hearing none, we'll go on to the next slide there. Get me back on the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. At this point, we have a couple of capital projects, and I'd like to ask Justin Lipsey to come up and provide the board with a short explanation to the projects that are included in the capital improvement project plan.
Am I on here? All right, good evening, members of the board. As General Manager Chisholm mentioned, we've got some capital projects to talk to you about in detail. Item one here is a laboratory piece of equipment, and our lab director, Ms. Jordan Reyes here, can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But this is a replacement of a GCMS instrument, which is the instrument that the laboratory uses to analyze our THM levels in our treated in water. And the instrument that's replacing is about 10 or 12 years old, and the system software is no longer supported by updated operating systems for the computer that's attached to. So this would be replacing that instrument so we can continue to maintain close watch on our THM levels in the distribution system. Moving down to the following item, 2102 there. This is the next phase of the Eastside Water Bank expansion project, which is on the property to the east of the existing Eastside Water Bank project. As you may recall, the board approved preliminary design and CEQA to Kennedy Jenks earlier this year for that project. And this would be, the next phase would be final design of the recharge basins and the actual construction of the pipeline and the basins. Moving on to 21-03. This is a shop for our new maintenance department. So this the location is still being decided, but this would be a large shop with office space, restrooms, electrical facilities to support welding equipment, compressed air, possibly a large gantry crane to move heavy items about the shop. Pretty much everything that our new maintenance department would need in order to do their job. So that's that item. And
I have a question. That's something new I haven't heard anything about. Maintenance department shop?
Yeah, this item was presented previously to the Capital Improvement Projects Committee.
How long ago?
Just a couple months ago, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, and is it replacing something, or why do we need that?
No, it's not. This would be a new building to support the growing maintenance department. Currently, they've got a smaller shop kind of down below the Quartz OR treatment plant that the welder was working out of. My understanding is that shop is really of insufficient size, really for the welder, but definitely for this maintenance department as it grows. So this would be kind of the vision is that all the maintenance department crew would have this place to call their own, with large workspaces in order to facilitate, rebuilding pumps or anything that they might need to do in that shop. They just don't currently have space for that right now.
How's that work being done?
Majority of that work's being done by contract.
Okay, so then we'll be able to do more work in-house. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And in addition to that, it'll also provide a place for work that'll be done associated with High Desert Water Bank, maintenance of that particular equipment. As we increase in the volume of water wells and pumps that we have, there'll be a need to have those a shop of larger size in order to be able to maintain that increased volume of equipment.
Okay, and we won't need any additional personnel other than what we've already approved for this maintenance work?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to the last item on this list, 21-04. This is the construction phase of the approved underground piping at the west side water bank. So this is the water bank we have at 140th Street West and Avenue B. As you may recall, earlier this year, the board approved a design contract to MC Engineering to work on the pipeline project there. This is to replace all the above ground aluminum pipe. We've spent close to $1 million over a 10-year period just replacing that aluminum pipe, not to mention all of the labor costs associated with refitting pipes and et cetera. So the design has progressed to about 90% level. Their last cost estimate on this project for construction was $3.5 to $4.5 million. And we think now that we're closer to 90%, we'll probably come in under that. We want to ensure that we have enough funds set aside for the construction of that project. And we're continuing to value engineer to ensure we get a cost-efficient project out there for that. And that's all for the proposed capital improvement plan. This does build upon the approved carryover capital improvement projects that we discussed last budget year and are either in progress and haven't been paid out in full yet or are carrying over into the new fiscal year. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Got a question.
Yes, Director Dice?
Yes. Have we determined a location for the maintenance department shop?
No, we haven't. That will be discussed as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Director Van Dam, I had a question. Did we have old aluminum pipe we're selling that we're replacing new with, or?
There is some aluminum piping still being used kind of on the northern side of the west side water bank recharge facility. So the plan would be to take any aluminum pipe that's still in good shape and stockpile that in the yard that's there on site. And then that would be able to be used for those northern recharge basins as that pipe wears out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Next item to discuss is the proposed asset replacement improvement plan projects for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. These projects, once again, were reviewed by the Capital Facilities Committee. And these are, in essence, repairs to existing facilities that we have. And they're broken up based on location. I've asked John Bozigin, the water operations manager, to give the board a overview of the projects that are being done and how they fit into the larger picture of maintaining our current assets.
Thanks, Dwayne. Okay, I'm going to go over this. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every project. I know you guys are disappointed about that. They're pretty exciting. Actually, there's probably half a dozen that I want to point out. The whole purpose of our capital project asset replacement and improvement plan is to replace and or repair any operational facilities or parts or components in order to avoid predictable failure or outages. And we've always tried to take care of the predictable things. Sometimes things come out of the blue and nobody can be prepared for it. But if we can see things that are ending their normal lifespan, then we want to give our attention to those. So the first, if you look at your handout under the Quartz Hill facility, I'm going to point out ER 2104, and that's GAC filter media replacement on the last 12 filters of Quartz Hill. If you remember last year, we did filters 1 through 12. This year, we're going to do filters 13 through 24. That came in at $1.35 million. Last year, last year it was, looking, 1.14, so it went up a little bit. Staging is going to be a little more difficult for the last 13 filters, so the mobilization price did go up a little bit. This will not be an annually recurring expense. This is something that we do at our Rosamond, Quartz Hill, and Eastside treatment plants on a 10 to 12 year rotational basis. So if we didn't have this in the budget, obviously our budget this year would be 1.35 million less. BIR 2103, that's the Leona Valley Pump Station roof. That building was built in 1976. It was the original roof. And these really violent winds we had this spring kind of destroyed what's remaining of that roof. And it's a parapet style roof, flat. And we've gotten several bids, and we are going to allocate 50,000, and I think it'll be much less than that, to redo that roof, put a little bit of an internal slope on it, and it should be a 20 to 25 year roof when they get done with it. Moving on to the Rosamond treatment plant, we have, you'll see ER 2108. We're going to rehab central feed pump number 4. We have 5 pumps. Those are high lift pumps, 4,160 volt pumps. They take water from the Rosamond treatment plant and pump it up to the Mojave tank farm, about a 400-foot lift. Every year we've replaced one of those pumps, and we're going to do number 4 this year. We'll do number 5 next year. That will leave us with 5 good pumps that we can count on. And those pumps previously lasted 40 years. But realistically, if you can get 25 years out of one of these big pumps, you're doing pretty good. We will now move to the Eastside facility. First item, ER 21-11, says replace and upgrade turbidimeters. Turbidimeter is an instrument that we use in water treatment. And what that instrument does is it tells you the clarity of the water. And there is an MCL for turbidity. And the equipment we have now, the turbidimeters we have now at Eastside are obsolete. They're not supported anymore. We've replaced the units at Rosamond and at Quartz Hill with the new, they're called TU 3500 turbidimeters, and they are the state-of-the-art instruments. So we've allocated $60,000 to upgrade the Eastside facility with those.
John, this is Shelley. I have a question.
Go ahead, Sean.
That facility isn't very old.
The Eastside facility? Oh, not the bank. This is the treatment plant.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, that was built when I was in my mid-20s, believe it or not. So it's old. Okay, last item on Eastside, VN 21-01, ATV style utility vehicle. I put Polaris just as an example. Why do we want to get one of these little get-around vehicles? There's so many times, especially when we're at the water bank, that getting in a truck, going to where it's muddy, getting the truck stuck, having to spend man hours getting the truck out, it's just not efficient. So we were thinking if we tried one of these little utility vehicles, it's like a little, lack of a better word, a little ATV, a little mini dune buggy, very hard to get stuck. And they could use these at the water banks. This one would be used mainly at the Eastside Water Bank. And we'll see how that works. It might save manpower. It might be easier for the guys to get into places that they normally couldn't get into. So we've allocated $17,000 to try one of these, see if it works. The same thing on the next facility, Westside Water Bank. We've allocated monies to utilize one out there for the very same reasons. We think it's prudent. We think it's going to work out pretty well, but only time will tell on that. moving to Westside Water Bank. ER 21-18, Fairmont 60-inch valve replacement. Now that is the original 60-inch valve when they built the West feeder back in the early to mid 70s. That 60-inch valve controls the flow to the whole West feeder. It's gotten progressively worse. It doesn't seal. There's no positive way to shut off the West feeder. And so we're thinking we've allocated $120,000, which is, that would involve complete excavation and replacement of the valve, worst case scenario. We have talked to our valve expert. He does not think that's going to be necessary. He believes that he can rebuild that valve in place. And if not, that he can certainly replace it for much less than that. But that valve does need some attention, so we can shut the West feeder off grip tight. And then moving more towards the aqueduct up at Fairmont, there's a slide gate. Now that slide gate does seal, or used to seal, but over the years, the threaded shaft that controls the slide gate has become pretty bent up. So we're going to have a machinist look at that and see if he can machine us a new shaft, and have our valve expert, R&B Automation does most of our valve work, have them replace that for us without having to put a cofferdam in the aqueduct or do anything too crazy like that. And he's pretty confident he can do the same thing. And that'll take care of that facility, which is, 50 plus years old. Here's an interesting one, the next one where you see feeders. The last one on that page, BIR 21-10, Palm Ranch turnout piping replacement. The corner of M8 and 60th Street West, it would be where Godey Hills Estates is, it would be the southeast corner of M8 and 60th. There's a turnout, an Avek turnout, where we serve Palm Ranch. They have not used it in several years. But the pipe that feeds that turnout, the main feeder, it's called the 60th Street lateral, runs down the west side of 60th Street. And there is a 10-inch pipe that runs from that pipe under 60th Street to that turnout. Well, unfortunately, that pipe was put in, I think it was put in the mid-'80s. 60th Street was a 2-lane road, and urban legend has it that was put in by an AVAC crew, and it's bare steel pipe. We've had some leaks in that pipe, and whenever Palm Ranch has taken water out of that turnout, it's usually begins as red water, which is rust, which is never good for potable. Replaced. Staff kind of got to talking about it, and Dwayne came up with a pretty creative idea that we could use that existing pipe possibly as a sleeve, so that we don't have to excavate the road or do a bore and jack under 60th Street, which would be tremendously expensive. We did allocate $200,000. If we can go with that idea and just put a poly sleeve or poly pipe through that sleeve, it's a little smaller diameter, we can do it for much, much less and accomplish the same thing. So that's going to be how we're going to try to attack that. Unfortunately, that won't be an in-house job. That'll be have to be a W.M. Lyles or someone equal to them that does traffic control and excavation in pretty critical areas. But we think we have more than enough budget to get that project done. Let's see. Going to the last page, we have our maintenance facilities or department. And you'll notice EN 21-07, that's a 480 volt, 4160 volt step up transformer, portable. If you'll recall, probably 4 years ago, we purchased one. It's custom made, and the board has had allocated funds to purchase 6 Caterpillar 500 kW portable generators. With the current Edison public safety power shutoff, protocol, we expect more power shutoffs during the summer, and these generators will run most of our pump stations. The problem is 3 of our pump stations are not 480 volts, they're 4160 volts. So we had this custom transformer built to parallel 2 generators and turn 480 volts into 4160 volts. And that will allow us to power those 3 pump stations. Should we have a valley-wide outage, we wouldn't be having to shuffle one transformer from site to site. So we're going to allocate monies, $165,000 to build another one of these portable transformers, and that will give us redundancy, and that will allow us to continue to serve water to the Acton area and to the Mojave area. Those are both 4160 pump stations. Transfer switches is right under that. And those are just switches, big industrial switches that mount on the pump station switch gear. All of our pump stations, we're trying to mount them on pump stations and wells so that when we do have a power outage, our electricians aren't fumbling with cables and opening up bus bars and risking the very high probability or possibility of electrocution. These are installed, and when the electricians get out there, the generator's backed up, the cables are color-coded, you plug them in, and you turn the generator on, flip the switch, and the pump station takes off. So I think it's very prudent to do that. We've already purchased over the years probably 8 of these, and they work very, very well. And the last item that I will point out is BR 121-11. That's the West Administration building, the old building. If you've been upstairs or downstairs, all building the HVAC controls, air conditioning and heating, it's called mechanical equipment. That's your blowers, your boilers, your chillers, all the piping, the thermostats, everything that keeps a building hot or cold. We can show you in that building some sites that would probably make you lose sleep at night. Some of that piping is pretty old and pretty bad shape. We did replace the chillers and the boiler about 6-7 years ago, but a lot of the piping and the pneumatic controls and thermostats and so forth, and air handlers actually do need to be replaced. They're 45 years old. So we've allocated $250,000 to get that done, and that will bring that building into a little more comfortable. If you've ever been in that building in the wintertime, it's usually blazing hot. In the summertime, it's freezing cold. There's no happy medium over there. So it'll be more efficient too, we believe.
John, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I thought, this is Director Sosable, I thought that we did upgrades like that when we put in the solar. That was part of that whole package.
That was not the upgrade on the solar. You know, they did the canopy out in the parking lot. They did all the lighting around the building, the parking lots and so forth. They did not attack the mechanical equipment in that building. To tell you the truth, it was pretty daunting, and there was really nobody interested in doing it. So we have found a couple of companies that are interested in bidding on it. But at the time, it was determined that going through this, even though the solar company could have found somebody to do it, it was going to be terribly expensive. I think way more than we can have it done for by just doing it ourselves, or us being the general on it, let's say. But yeah, that was not attacked. Although, Shelley, it was, you might be remembering about 6 years ago when we had C&D Refrigeration come out and replace the boiler and the 2 chillers outside. That was done fairly recently, and those will not be replaced again. Those are still in great shape.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, that being said, our total budget for new asset replacement and improvement projects is $3,894,000. We have $155,000 of what we call carryover projects from last fiscal year that were not started. No monies were spent on those projects, so we're carrying those into the new fiscal year, and we're going to try to get those done this year. We did get about 90% of our projects done last fiscal year, and we are going to shoot for 100% this year. Be happy to take any more questions. Well, thank you very much.
We have one more short discussion with regards to the proposed planning projects associated with the IT and planning projects, and Justin Lipsey will provide a short discussion of those projects.
Good evening again. Jumping right in, top project on that list, IT 1-21. This is SCADA upgrade phase 2, which is for the selection of the actual SCADA system and to put out an RFP for an integrator. That's the person who actually comes in and sets up and programs the SCADA system. You may recall that a couple fiscal years ago, fiscal year 18-19, the board approved a contract with Automation Services to come in and upgrade all of the PLCs, which is kind of the brain and the heartbeat of the control system for the treatment plant, and that was completed. And last year we approved some funding, $50,000, to determine the requirements necessary for a SCADA system that meets Avek's needs. As we got into some preliminary conversations with our SCADA consultants on that particular project, it was identified that it's a little bit of a larger effort than what we had planned for. And so we're asking for some additional funding to kind of expand that just a little bit. So that $150,000 there would build upon the $50,000 that was approved previously and is included in the carryover line item at the bottom. What that will do is will be enough money to have our consultant work with another consultant that's very familiar with all the different SCADA systems that are out there, and demo several of those softwares for us, meet with us several times to determine what we like about our current SCADA system, what we don't like, what we absolutely need it to do, and what's just bells and whistles and not absolutely necessary. So they would get into all those details over the course of several meetings, and then demo some SCADA solutions for us where we could select the one that we like, and then help us draft a proposal to implement that particular SCADA system throughout our site. So that would get us to that point of actually selecting the SCADA system that's going to work for us at all of our current locations, and likely be implemented to integrate the High Desert Water Bank facility as well.
Just a second, Justin, for those of you that don't completely understand what SCADA means, the acronym, it's Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. It's the communication between all the remote sites and the main treatment plant of all the information and data. And it also provides for control, which is the turning on and off of pumps and other things. So just a little background. I sometimes get lost in some of these acronyms, but I thought it makes some clarity there.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, General Manager Chisholm. Sorry about that, directors. Moving on to item 2-21. This is the deployment of a SharePoint file server and agency intranet. You may recall last year's IT plan included the hiring of a document management consultant, and one of our strategic goals was to implement some type of document management solution. At the end of his meetings with us and his final report, his recommendation was to implement SharePoint. This is a Microsoft-based cloud-hosted file server, and it's something that we actually already pay for with our Office 365 licenses. The deployment of that file server is pretty technical and complicated, and we've reached out to our existing IT support service on if that's a project that they're capable of handling. They're a Microsoft partner, and they're definitely able to do that. And so we've included $80,000 in the budget for them to do the deployment of that. And that would piggyback on a previously approved carryover project, which would be for them to work with us on the actual design of what that file server would look like. So this would be a place where all of our agency files would be stored in the cloud. They would always be backed up. So this item actually meets multiple goals of ours. One is to ensure that none of our data is lost in the event something happens to this building in the physical server that's here on site, as well as the document management aspect. And then since all the files would be hosted in the cloud. It would allow us to set up an agency-wide intranet, which where we'd be able to provide access to files for staff working off-site or director documents, HR files, and things of that nature. So that's item 2. Item 3-21 is for a security camera system upgrade. Our security system that we have is good, but it was sort of piecemealed together by previous staff. There's no centralized management. The folks that are around that know the ins and outs of the camera system are, not working with it as much anymore as they're more involved in other duties. And so this money would be set aside to get a professional opinion on an enterprise camera system solution that would be centrally managed, where we could have access to viewing our cameras from anywhere, as well as storing all the recordings in the cloud or some safe on-site location where we always have that available to us. So that would really just beef up our security system overall. So that's that item. Moving on to 4-21. One of our strategic goals is to implement an asset management solution. We set aside some funds for this last year, but it was really what we thought was necessary for a software solution. As it turns out, as we discussed this with a few different consultants, the asset management is more of a process than just selecting a software and running with it. Our new assistant operations manager of water banking and maintenance has previously worked with an asset management product that went poorly. It was not favored by the staff, and therefore just did not go to use. So this would be hiring a consultant to walk us through the steps of really identifying what we need in an asset management solution, and then walking us through the process of identifying what we actually call assets, and then how to manage those within some type of software solution. And that would be really helpful in supporting our new maintenance department to forecast budget for future years, as the software should tell them when things are going to be due to be replaced, or when they're going to need maintenance, and therefore extend the life of those particular assets. So that's the 4 new IT and planning projects. And again, that builds upon the previously approved carryover planning projects with a budget of $520,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on those items. Great, thank you very much.
The last item I have to go over with you tonight is the agency cash reserves. And the agency has a cash reserve policy, and this particular slide summarizes what those are. You can see we have an operating reserve, and we use a max and a minimum to give us a range as to where the agency should be with regards to our reserves. So you can see we have a drought contingency reserve of between 2.3 million and 6.6 million. Our operating reserves a little over 29 million. Capital improvement and replacement reserves are about 14 to 18 million. State water contract reserves are almost 13 to 25 million. And then we go down to the post-employment benefit liability reserve of 8.6 million. So when you add these all up, you can see that the total reserve funds per the policy range from close to 68 million to 88 million. There's a swing there. The reason to complete this calculation is to find out how much the non-designated amounts are. And from what you can see here, you can have that ranges from 43 to 63 million of unallocated reserves. The cash and investment that we have at the end of 6/30/20 is a little over $131 million. So If we look at that, you can see that the current end of fiscal year, $131 million. We take our minimum reserve balances. This leaves us with some excess cash. You can see the budget surplus at $5.3 million, which is added in. Then we withdraw the capital improvements that we've talked about, which is about $14.5 million, and our debt principal payments, $4.8 million, and we allocate $5 million for additional water banking should we get a good water year. And so this, once we get through all of that, we end up with cash reserves of excess cash reserves of a little over $44 million. And if we look at what our estimated cash reserve balance will be at the end of next fiscal year is $112 million, which is over the $100 million, which is kind of the reserve that most of the directors are very comfortable with. So that would conclude the presentation for the board. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have with regards to any portions of the budget presentation, and the board order at the appropriate time is ready for adoption.
Okay, I have 3 questions. Okay. Mr. Director Donato. First question is, in the reserves, is any of that money, any of that dollar amount that's put there, have anything to do with the water banking, water that's in the ground? That are we using any of that as showing it as cash reserves?
We are not.
Okay, it's the first question. Second question, the agreement we have with Met, there's no Met money in there as well?
That's correct.
Okay, that's good. And how much money, what do we owe in bond debt indebtedness? Do you know what the dollar amount that is?
I'm looking over to Teresa. We'd have to look that up for you.
Okay, I just because that was one of the reasons why we had used the $100 million threshold, that if we ever got in a situation that if we had to pay the bonds off, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder why I'm bringing it up to the board, because everybody's going to know why was that $100,000 threshold there. Is because we always had ample money that if it went down if the interest rates, the adjustable rate went up to a certain rate, let's say 5-6%, it might be more affordable for us maybe to look at paying off the bonds with the reserve money we have. Because we do have, one of them's a fixed rate and the other one's an adjustable rate, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I don't need to know that answer tonight. I just want to make you answered my questions, that the water wasn't used and Met money wasn't being used as part of those figures.
Thank you for bringing that up, Director Donato.
That's all I have. No further questions.
Okay. But just the policies and the implementation of those policies by the board has put the agency in a very, very strong financial position.
Yeah, we are. That's why we're a AA plus rating.
Correct.
But we also got to spend money too. It's a double-edged sword. You can't have all the money and not build projects, and that's why J.P. Morgan, who was it? Who are we getting? The 2 ratings we get them from?
Rating agencies, Moody's and
Stanley's and Poor.
Standards and Poor's, yeah.
Right.
They like when you are improving the system, maintaining the system, increasing your water rates to offset your costs, and you have a dynamic water system with sufficient reserves to handle any foreseeable disaster that might occur and still maintain your financial integrity. And I believe the policies implemented by the board have provided that level of security.
I'll make a motion that we approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget as presented. This is Keith Dias.
I'll second. This is Director Lane.
Questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Justin Lane,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Item number 9, adjournment to the regular board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, July 26, 2020.
28.
Oh, did I not say that? Oh, July 28, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Justin Lane,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Shelley Sorsable.
Yes, and I'd like to thank staff for their excellent job in presenting this budget to us. And thank you for everybody's participation. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.